came to this project with an understanding of Julia Child. She taught me how to cook. He had a mom who helped him learn how to cook. But we loved those books. We loved all the series. We in our individual small towns watched those shows, beginning with The French Chef.
We wanted to write something that told the story of how this exceptional woman, became who she was, and at that particular stage in her life. That was interesting to us.
And it's such a great love story. Karen Woditsch, who plays Julia, I've worked with her for many years, really. And before that, I admired her. It's hard to describe how perfect she is in this role. She's at that right time in her life and in her work that it just came together. And she has honed her own cooking skill as we work on this. Not to mention she's free, she's smart, she's funny. She's a tremendous comic actress. I mean, she brings so many skills to the table.
My sister Julia and my grandma Julie, isn't that strange that all of them are named Julie and Julia? They loved watching her on television. So they were watching with Jacques Pepin, and I think Julia and Company was big in my grandmother's house. And my sister Julia did an imitation of Julia Child while she was cooking chickens, and she would call them dollies, and she would put them on the sink board and said, "This is my dolly that we're going to stuff with." That was my introduction to Julia Child. I knew about her cooking, not about her life before.
I think Julia Child is a perfect subject for a company like Timeline, because just like her, she refused to underestimate the intelligence and interest of her audience. Even though every publisher who saw the manuscript of Mastering the Art of French Cooking told her, this is way too complicated. No one wants to go in this much detail. But she said, no, this is the way it's done. And if people do this, give them something that nourishes them in some way, and they will embrace it and they'll relish it. And that's exactly the approach that Timeline takes with every production that I've ever seen here.
Plus, let me say, it's a company that loves to eat. I think their opening night parties are, some of the best opening night parties in town.
I had never met Craig before, but I've seen him many times on the stage in Chicago, obviously. And this feels to me like a very different role from anything I've ever seen him do before. And it's really exciting to see him discover it. It's great.
And he's also the freedom they have as a couple, maybe that's what chemistry is, trust and freedom. And they found it almost immediately.
When I was a kid, I'd flip around on the channel sometime, and there would be Julia on the and she would be doing these, and I stopped. You had to, because she was such a big personality. Her warbling voice and this huge woman cooking, it was fascinating to watch. So as a kid, you were mesmerized, not so much about the food. Who cared about the food? I was just looking at her, because she was such a different persona to be on the television at that time. There was nobody like her.
If you think about people sitting down for the first 10 minutes, they're going to be going, is she Julia Child? Is she Julia Child? And what I want is for them to go, they can do that for a little bit, and then after that, what is this relationship? Wow, and she came to it this time in her life, and then the story can take over. So what I try to do is not think about that, and just think about how excited she is to be in France for the first time. And her voice and her expansiveness, I think, is a lot of that character. So I'd like to concentrate on that more than sounding like Dan Aykroyd doing Julia Child.
Which we all think she's doing all the time.
Yeah, see, they all